What if your legacy wasn't something you built, but something you had to outrun? In this episode, I'm joined by horror author Andrew Adams, who returns to the show to discuss his chilling new novel, Son of a Serial Killer. We talk about the mythology of murderers, the soul-crushing weight of routine, and how trauma can twist perception until even reality starts to feel like fiction. Andrew shares how he crafted the quiet dread of Glenn Overton's life, why he refuses to glorify violence, and how horror can cut deeper when it feels just a little too real. Before we dive in, if you'd like to support the show and get access to exclusive book and film reviews, behind the scenes posts, and a weekly narrative audio drama, head over to patreon.com/The Dark Mind Podcast and become a citizen of the darkness. So without further ado, I give you Andrew Adams. Andrew, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me back. It's always a pleasure.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining me on this 31st day of May 2025. It is great to have you back on the show to discuss your latest novel, Son of a Serial Killer. As I've always felt, humans are the most terrifying monsters, so I'm always a fan of a good serial killer novel. What I loved about Son of a Serial Killer was that, along with the fear of serial killers, you explored the fascination and outright worship that some people direct toward them. Specifically, the admiration that male serial killers receive from women who I assume are drawn to what they consider the ultimate bad boy. I loved your fresh spin on the genre, and I'm looking forward to diving into the details with you, so thank you once again for joining me on the show.
Yep, thank you. I really appreciate it and happy to start talking about the new novel.
Hell yeah. Well, so the book is about a man named Glenn Overton, a cemented member of the rat race, punching the clock day in and day out as a corporate data entry clerk, complete with an insufferable boss. He lives with his alcoholic mother, who has neglected him his entire life by taking up residence at the bottom of a bottle. His only reprieve from misery is a platonic friendship with a coworker named Dana. One night, his world is turned upside down when he's confronted by a mortally wounded woman. He calls the police, but when they arrive, the woman is nowhere to be found. This causes some to question his sanity, while others begin to suspect that he may be the offspring of a notorious serial killer named Brock Blackwood, the offspring whose existence was only ever rumored, and that's where the story begins. So the opening scene is incredibly powerful. At first you don't realize it, spoiler alert, but it's actually the notorious serial killer Brock Blackwood being apprehended. He urges the young officer to kill him, suggesting that doing so would make the officer a legend. Brock appears to be obsessed with legacy, power, and recognition. Would you say Brock sees himself as more than human, more like an idea or a symbol?
Yeah, I think he sees himself as kind of an advanced human or advanced beyond humanity, like many serial killers do. And in his mind, he's kind of the perfect being. He's free from humanity and the things that, quote unquote, hold us back, like emotions and empathy and things like that. And at that point in the story, that's the end of Brock's story. And then we get into Glenn. So in his mind, he wants to end his legacy with his death, kind of cement his legacy as this perfect being that existed for a period of time, and then he goes off into the sunset instead of rotting in prison.
Yeah, and I remember, can't remember who it was, referred to him as the apex predator.
Yes.
And I've always wondered, I'm not quite sure the delineation between sociopath and psychopath. Obviously, sociopaths lack empathy, and I guess psychopaths are the ones that will veer into criminal behavior. Like some sociopaths, they don't really have empathy, but they know, okay, I'm not supposed to do this, so I guess I'm not supposed to do this. But I've always wondered what it's like to just not, as far as I know, they don't really feel a whole lot. And fear is one of the things that I don't think they feel. Kind of like Hannibal Lecter when Dr. Chilton is talking to Clarice about the time he bit the nurse's face off and he was still connected to an EKG machine. What does he say? His pulse never got above 85, even when he ate her tongue. You know, I just always wondered what it must be like to have to go to such extremes to feel anything.
It's probably miserable. I mean, not to make excuses for them, but I would imagine it's got to be pretty boring.
Mm-hmm. Well, fast forward to the present day, and we see a day in the life of the protagonist, Glenn Overton. Glenn's life is portrayed with a sense of numb routine and low-key misery. What did you want readers to feel about him in these early scenes?
I wanted Glenn to just be really plain and boring and basically have nothing going for himself. He has a job that he hates. He has one friend that's very platonic, and his mother he has a horrible relationship with. So that's why we jump directly from Brock's first scene into Glenn in the office, because it shows that contrast between the two.
And wasn't there, I think somebody makes reference to it in the book, but I'm actually looking it up. Did you have any reason for giving him the last name Overton? Because I know there's such a thing as the Overton window. Wasn't somebody mocking him in some way?
I didn't make that connection myself. I think that was just a happy accident.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I'm, let's see.
Things like that, the names and names of locations and whatnot, I'm horrible with remembering. It's kind of just a crapshoot.
Okay. Gotcha. Yeah, I'm looking at the Overton window right now. The Overton window is a model for understanding how ideas shift in public perception, describes the range of policies or beliefs that are politically or socially acceptable to the mainstream at a given time. Okay.
It fits.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that does fit, because Glenn is he just goes along with the flow and does whatever he's supposed to do, and he doesn't break the mold at all. So that fits perfectly.
Yeah, I always wondered why they call the silent generation the silent generation. And that was, I looked it up and that was the reason. They just, I guess there wasn't any sort of revolution. They were kind of the fall in line, do what you're told. Yeah.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Yep. Well, at this point in the book, Glenn is awoken. Is that a word? He wakes up from a deep sleep by the sound and vision of a severely wounded woman named Abby, who is screaming for help and claiming she's been attacked by, quote, Blackwood. When Glenn calls the police and explains the situation, the operator asks if he's talking about Brock Blackwood. In addition to the police, a massive contingent of the media shows up, triggered by the leak of the name of the notorious serial killer. There's a great moment where someone says, quote, no wonder the media vultures showed up so quickly. So how do you think true crime culture contributes to the glorification of serial killers? Because honestly, I host a literary podcast and I could only dream of having the kind of following that some of these true crime podcasts have. I might switch over to true crime. No, I'm just kidding.
We touched on this a little bit back when we were talking about serial publication. And that was a huge theme in that book. I didn't want to rehash too much in this one. Just a little jab at the media there. But violence sells, and it gets people's attention, and it's not something that I think most of us enjoy, but it makes money, and crime makes money.
All right, let's see here. What percent of podcasts are true crime? Wait for it.
I imagine a good amount.
On Apple Podcasts, true crime podcasts make up just under 0.5% of the total. I don't believe that.
Yeah, seems off.
Yeah.
I was going to say 10, but.
Yeah, like weekly podcast listeners aged 13 and older engage with true crime. 22% of U.S. weekly podcast listeners aged 13 and older engage with the true crime podcast, making a third most listened to genre in the U.S. Yeah, there you go. Third most listened to. I'll take that.
And, we talked about that, I believe, a little bit for serial publication, that, kind of like who's to blame, the listeners or the media for feeding it to people who then consume it.
I think it's like a snake that eats its own tail.
Right. So it's, it's popular.
Yeah. Yes, my wife loves true crime. It scares the hell out of me. She knows how to kill me.
Keeps us on our best behavior.
Yeah, it does. Unfortunately for Glenn, once they investigate the house, they find no trace of the woman, calling Glenn's sanity into question. Did you intend for readers to interpret this moment as a psychological breakdown, paranormal event, or something in between?
A little bit of both. And situations like that, I typically leave it up to the reader's discretion to a certain point. And the reason I did that was because even if he was, quote, really seeing ghosts, there's no way to scientifically prove that anyway. Like, he can't prove to everybody, hey, she was real, she was here. I do kind of hint at it, though, that they are actually happening to him later in the book, because they give him information and breadcrumbs about following stuff to Brock's house and things like that. So it was a little bit of both. Definitely wanted the reader to decide.
Gotcha. Well, Glenn unfortunately finds out that the house he lives in is the same place where a woman named Abby was brutally murdered by Brock Blackwood. There's something deeply chilling about living in the same place where a brutal murder occurred, especially unknowingly. What role do you think physical spaces play in carrying trauma or memory, especially in stories like this one? And not just in the story, like maybe in real life, because I don't quite know if I believe in an afterlife, but maybe, some sort of leftover energy imprint or something that lasts for a little while, or maybe indelibly coats the atmosphere somehow. That sounds pretty way out too, but
I'm in the same boat as you. I'm not a very religious person, nor do I really believe in paranormal entities or ghosts or whatever. But I do think that there's, such things as liminal spaces and these sorts of energies that can exist. And a lot of times it can be just mental, just knowing that you're in a space where somebody was murdered. That can be enough to make it feel real enough to you. So it's definitely something I'm fascinated by without necessarily believing in it. Ghosts and afterlife and things like that. It is fascinating.
Yeah. There is a movie, I think it was called White Noise, that had Michael Keaton in it. And it was, I forget what the name of the concept is, but they're trying to capture the voice of spirits by, I guess, looking for their existence kind of floating around in electrical interference.
Yeah.
So they use, like the spaces in between radio stations, stuff like that. They use more sophisticated equipment. And I'm like, man, you think about how many cell phones are in use at one time, people on portable radios, police officers, firefighters, all of the signals flying through the air. I mean, I think that's a bit of a reach.
And it's one of those things that if you want to believe it, you're going to find something that,
I mean, it makes sense. Like, well, if energy is left over, you could possibly pick it up. But I don't think what they find is anything more than just a cluttered space of radio and cellular transmission.
Yeah. And, just to bring back to the previous question, that was kind of a huge focus of The Shining as well. The thought of the house carrying people's energy and their negative energy and transferring that on to later generations.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh God, that's a great book and great movie. It's too bad the architects of both of those don't really get, or from what I hear, didn't really get along.
Yeah, I guess it was pretty contentious, but Kubrick's one of my favorite filmmakers ever, so I got to stand on his side.
Yeah, anytime I have a filmmaker on the show, I like to ask them who's your favorite director for their technical skill, and then who for their artistic vision. Mine is technical skill Kubrick, artistic vision Villeneuve.
Okay, that's a good choice.
Yeah.
I was going to say Scorsese.
Now for artistic vision,
Yeah.
or okay, yeah,
Well,
yeah,
could be for both, but yeah.
yeah. I mean, either one could be for both, but
Yeah.
I think those long atmospheric shots that Villeneuve does, just his artistic vision kind of overrides his technical skill.
Yeah, that's all you need.
Yeah. Well, circling back to the book, Glenn confides this to basically his only friend, a woman named Dana, who is also his coworker. I am, of course, speaking about the fact that someone was killed in the house. So why did you choose to make their relationship platonic rather than turning it into an office romance or something that just had the possibility of making his life a lot more messy?
That was a part of it, yeah. The first part being that I think both of them are kind of messy people as far as not having everything together in their own lives. So I didn't want it to seem like Glenn or Dana could function in a relationship at this point in the story. So basically, they're just surviving with one another, as many people tend to do, just survive each day. And the second being, just in general, I don't find romance that interesting. You don't find a lot of it in my books just because it's kind of one dimensional, and as far as the human experience goes, it just kind of didn't seem to have a place in the story.
Gotcha. I think who was it? Oh God, I can't remember. I was asking him about his sex scenes in his book. They were implied. They started off, with a hug and a kiss, and then the next thing you know, they're waking up in the morning.
Yeah.
And I was asking him about it, and he's like, "Oh God, I've tried writing sex scenes. This just doesn't work." So I guess some people just start writing and they're like, "What the hell am I doing?"
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel. Even just on a relationship level and having them have that conversation, that's just not my wheelhouse. And other people are good at it, but just not that interesting to me, at least for my stories.
How did you propose to your wife?
Carefully.
You don't have to tell me.
I think I did a good job at Disneyland.
Okay, gotcha.
So, but that's not my strong suit, being a romantic, feely type of person. That's just not who I am, and she knew that.
Well, it sounds like it worked though.
She knew I did the best I could with my personality. So,
well, Glenn has a really caustic working relationship with his boss, a woman named Monica, who is very antagonistic toward him. Was Monica simply a power-hungry tyrant, or was her hostility a response to Glenn's behavior? Because Dana was always, cracking jokes about him falling asleep at his desk, and I think she mentioned something about him having alcohol in his coffee.
Yeah, one morning. That was towards the end when things were starting to go off the rails.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, she hates him because she's the definition of corporate, and she's the manager, and he's the opposite. He doesn't care about the job. And, if you work in jobs like that, I think that a lot of people do hate it, and a lot of people are apathetic, but you don't say the quiet part out loud. And Glenn basically does by sleeping at his desk. And at one point in the story, they kind of get into it, and Dana mentions going to HR, and that kind of backs off Monica. So I wanted to just touch on the corporate lifestyle and how stale it is in comparison with Glenn's life, which has also been incredibly boring.
Yeah, it made me think of Workaholics. Have you ever seen that?
Yeah,
that show. What was the name of their boss? Who I'm talking about?
I can picture her, but
yeah.
I
Let
hope it
me.
wasn't Monica. That would be.
Oh, you think it was like you
I hope not.
subconsciously? Let's see.
I hope not.
Or Alice.
Alice, yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Okay. Yep. That would have been so crazy if it was Monica.
Yeah, that similar kind of dynamic though. Just you have a corporate boss who's there to do her job, and to be fair to the bosses, when you have people like the workaholics characters or Glenn, it makes your life a lot more difficult too. So
Yeah. Yeah. That's such a great show. Anyway, well, so what role do you see toxic workplace dynamics playing in horror or psychological fiction like this?
I think it can be a huge psychological drain if you hate your job. We spend 40 plus hours a week at work. And if you've ever been in a job that you hate and you leave work, it stays with you all night and you have trouble sleeping and whatnot. It feels like you're always at work. So I think it can be a huge psychological drain on people. And, for most of us, that kind of becomes our personality to an extent, is our jobs. So as far as horror in general, I think it kind of just goes hand in hand with the psychological element.
Movies keep coming to my mind. Was it Office Space?
Yeah.
I believe you have my stapler.
Yeah. This is another good one.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the boss in Office Space is what's his name?
Lumberg.
Lumberg. There you go. Bill Lumberg.
Yeah.
A little bit, the opposite of Monica, in that she's very brash and he's just very
he just slowly sucks your soul out of your body.
Exactly. He's an energy vampire.
Yeah. Well, aside from the toxic relationship Glenn has with Monica, it seems the whole office is against him. So, is that real, or was that sort of like some sort of delusional paranoia? And if it's real, why isn't Dana a part of it?
Being from Glenn's point of view, that's how he perceives it. He perceives that everybody's against him because he always has seen people that way. But he also doesn't fraternize with anybody, so it's kind of goes both ways. And then Dana doesn't get in with it because she's like Glenn, that she's only there for her paycheck and that's about it. And she mentions at one point that she wanted to be a lawyer. So you have two, roughly 30-year-olds that kind of underachievers, never made it where they wanted to. And so that's why they bond over that.
Yeah. She was, oh yeah, that's right. Cause she was always given the legal advice.
Yeah. Amateur lawyer.
Uh-huh. Well, when Glenn is finally able to confront his mother about the truth of their home, that it was the site of a brutal murder committed by a notorious serial killer, she tells him he wouldn't understand her reasons for lying. Her reasons involved a man who promised her the world, and while she didn't hurt Abby, she also didn't help her, which is how she was able to acquire the house. So at this point, it's heavily hinted that he's the son of Brock Blackwood, but does he realize it yet? Because if I heard her say that, talk about I didn't help Abby, I'd be like, wait a minute, you didn't help Abby? How were you involved in this? Like, did he realize it yet, or?
Yeah, there's a lot of denial. And I think he makes mention at one point that he's sort of always known. Dana makes mention at one point that maybe he's having these visions as something that he's heard in the past, and these are just repressed memories. So it's hinted at that he's in heavy denial about everything, including his mother.
Yeah. Well, next we are witness to a dream that Glenn has about how his mother and Brock Blackwood met. There's this thread of characters wanting to escape their lives. The two main ones, Glenn's mother Penny drowning herself in alcohol, and Glenn himself wanting to disappear into routine. What connects these two impulses in your view?
Just wanting something that you don't have. In Penny's case, Glenn's mother, she wants relief, and Glenn wants normalcy, and he's never felt normalcy in his life. And Penny, for her entire adult life, she's never felt relief. So they just go hand in hand, as basically just removing the thorn that's bothering them.
Did she drown herself in alcohol out of regret or out of pining away for Brock?
Both. I hinted at both, yeah. partially that she misses him incredibly, which is why she ends up letting the secret spill in the first place. And then towards the end, without spoilers, she kind of opens up a little bit on her regrets and things like that. But basically, in her mind, she said, well, anything for Brock. So there's just kind of the toll to pay.
Yeah. Well, in chapter 8, there is a very public meltdown involving Glenn during an office meeting, where he has a vivid vision of the pulverized body of one of Blackwood's victims and feels that the entire office is chanting in unison against him. The chant, quote, "Blackwood's only son must pay forevermore," feels like a breaking point. What's happening to Glenn psychologically in that scene, and what does it say about the weight of inherited guilt?
That's just the feelings of being utterly alone and feeling like everybody's against you. Even if it's not necessarily true, it's that paranoia. And he's, it's just kind of coming to a head at that point and just taking on his new identity. And as far as the inherited guilt, he's somebody who's kind of just been a wallfly his entire life. And now, because of his status, and he kind of doesn't really have much going for him, he feels that guilt even more. It's not like he can confidently say, yeah, I didn't do anything wrong. Basically, just whatever. He has to take that as kind of insult to injury.
And I guess we kind of touched on it a little bit, but like in scenes like that, where, I mean, it's like he's being transported to a different dimension. Is he hallucinating? Is it supernatural?
Like I said before, I like to keep that open to interpretation, but the way that I wanted it portrayed was he was dissociating more so than hallucinating. So he was, basically extreme duress and panic, and he's viewing the world in a different manner than he should be, which I guess kind of goes hand in hand with hallucination. But, if you have like an extreme panic attack or something like that, you don't see things very clearly.
Yeah. Well, in chapter 9, Glenn is approached and introduced to a group of shady characters that tell him that he is the only son and heir to the infamous serial killer, Brock Blackwood. Glenn is suddenly surrounded by people who worship his father and see him as a kind of heir to something divine. What made you want to bring in this cult-like element to the story, and what does it say about how people mythologize violence?
That was one of those ideas that when that popped in my head, I thought, you know what, let's just take the story for all that we can. Let's not be plain or boring with anything, and let's just go all the way with it. And the reason why I wanted that was to give Glenn a sort of lifeline that now all of a sudden, for the first time in his 30 years, he feels important and needed, and things that he's craved, not having supportive parents. So the Brock's babies, they idolized Brock for what he was, which was obviously very violent. And so it just speaks on our fascination with serial killers and, the attention that people like Ted Bundy got when he was in prison, and the fan mail and, the adoration. So I wanted that included in the story for sure.
Yeah, the Night Stalker. It was amazing. He got married in prison, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, man, that was crazy.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's just part of human nature, I suppose, and whatever anybody feels about it, people love serial killers.
Yep.
So
yeah, especially when they make a series out of them. Like, was Dahmer the most recent one, or is there one more recent than that?
Yeah, I know Dahmer was 2-3 years ago, something like that. There was a couple Ted Bundy movies a few years before that, 2019 maybe.
Zach Efron, I think, played.
Yeah,
yeah.
The Netflix series.
Yeah, when the Jeffrey Dahmer one was out, I remember seeing a meme on social media. It was Jeffrey Dahmer sitting at a booth, and you could tell by the decor of the place that it was Five Guys.
Mm-hmm.
And the caption says, "This doesn't taste like Five Guys."
That's a good one. That's a good one.
Well, in chapter 10, there's a scene where Dana walks into Glenn's house and finds him passed out drunk on the couch. Dana's still there for him, even when he's pushing everyone else away. So, what's going on in their friendship that makes her hang on when most people would have checked out?
Yeah, like I touched on before, just kind of the similarities between the two. And in her mind, by extension of helping Glenn, she's helping herself. And she's wanting him to kind of stay out of the gutter, because without him, then she suddenly feels like she has nothing to live for. And it's just kind of a bit of a parasitic friendship in certain ways. Glenn doesn't always treat her incredibly nicely either.
Yeah, is she a little codependent?
Yeah, a little bit. And I think in Glenn's case, partially for him too.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Well, in chapter 11, Glenn once again has a dream that involves a victim of Blackwood, only this one is actually a scene of the victim being killed by Blackwood. Once he awakens, he decides to go down to the basement to see what he can uncover about his past and the past of the house. This chapter delves into Glenn's physical descent into the basement, almost like a descent into his own subconscious. What were you exploring by aligning this literal space with psychological excavation?
yeah, you nailed it. I wanted him to basically symbolize digging deeper into his life and his past mostly. And the basement was a place that everything was hidden, and his mother kind of stacked everything around these objects and other stuff that we won't spoil. He's just digging into his past and kind of going somewhere that he's not mentally prepared to, something he doesn't want to dig up necessarily.
Gotcha. Well, now we're going to talk about everything he found and how the story ends. No, actually, unfortunately, dear listener, you'll have to read the book to find out what Glenn discovers, but it is a great book. So, listeners at home, be sure to buy it, read it, and review it. And I noticed on, excellent cover, by the way, but on that cover, your book was blurbed by the very talented author Rebecca Rowland, who said, quote, "Straddling the line between true crime and fucked up fever dream, Adams doesn't just throw a twist into the serial killer fiction subgenre, he powerbombs it." End quote.
It's a great quote.
Rebecca Rowland's blurb paints the novel as something that completely upends the serial killer subgenre. What do you think it means to powerbomb a genre, and what did you want to leave in ruins?
I took that as the ultimate compliment myself. My goal in writing is to just explore new territory and try new things, and basically not rehash subject matter that's been done to death. So the fact that she said that to me is the ultimate compliment that I could receive. I want to bring something new to horror, and I think it can be a very stagnant genre. You just look at the 80s slasher movies and the 2000s ghost stories, and it can just rehash the same material over and over. So I just want to bring something new to it.
Are there any tropes that you never get sick of? Like kind of what you were talking about? Are there things like, it doesn't matter how many different ways it's been done the same way, I still love it?
I love slashers. I'm not, necessarily talking shit about them, but,
well, no, I didn't think you were, but like, I just didn't know that there's some people that like, I can take a slasher, I can take this and that, but there's nothing really that, they can just binge and not eventually get sick of if they're seeing kind of the same trope over and over again. But so slasher, you never get sick of that?
I love slashers. Yeah. It's not something that I personally want to create, but to watch them as movies. And then I'll kind of cheat with an answer here. The Evil Dead franchise, that subject matter, I'll never get tired of. The Deadites and the possession and things like that.
Yeah. And like Terrifier, it's a slasher, but I don't know. There's just something about the personality of it's Art the Clown, right?
Yeah.
There's something about the personality of Art the Clown that just nobody's ever done before.
Right. And that's why it's refreshing.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's comedic without, it's almost too dark to be funny, but it's hilarious at the same time.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And the gore, I mean, Damien Leone, he was a special effects guy, or started off as a special effects guy. So, I mean, you can just see the practical effects, just the artisanship involved in that, like pure slasher, pure, because a lot of people will try to cut corners with digital stuff or,
yep.
Whatever, but practical effects are very expensive and they're hard to kind of pull off well sometimes, but he's a mastermind.
And he's got his own style. When you watch the movies, you could just tell it's Terrifier gore. It's its own thing.
Mm-hmm. His own flavor, if you'll pardon the expression. Well, have you had any reader reviews that have surprised you?
One guy, he said that he wanted to punch Glenn in the face throughout the book. And
okay.
I was like, okay, I was trying to make him somewhat of a victim of his own life. And the guy called him pathetic. He left a really nice review, but he said Glenn was so pathetic, he just wanted to punch him in the face. And not what I was going for, but sure.
Okay.
I wanted him to be more relatable to a lot of people, especially nowadays, that just kind of find themselves stuck. I mean, I think that's more of a common issue than people like to admit.
Yeah, like even I was having problems with my day job for quite a while, and it was because I was obsessed with the devil you know.
Yeah, exactly.
I didn't want to take a chance on doing something a little, transferring to a different spot because I'm just like, well, I don't know what's going to happen. Even though it's shitty here, at least I know what's going to happen,
Yeah,
so.
I've been there myself. I think a lot of people have, and it's kind of almost a taboo topic among people at work because you're not supposed to leave your job, and everybody kind of looks down upon you in certain places. And so, I kind of thought Glenn was more of the average person, but the guy wanted to punch him in the face, so that's okay.
Poor Glenn.
Yeah. All right. But I will say the response has been very positive. I'm thankful for everybody for that, and everybody's free to feel however they want. I like reading, so.
Yeah, let's see here. You've got here, I'll just bring it up here. Yep, you're almost at 5. Almost at 5 stars, I meant.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is the review on here?
It was on Goodreads.
I was on Goodreads?
It was an ARC reader.
Let's see. Oh, it was an ARC reader. Okay.
Yeah.
You make me kind of want to read it, but I won't if you don't want me to.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
Let's see.
It was a 4-star, and it was on Christmas Day, which made me crack up too.
Oh, Veronica. She was the one that turned me on to Leslie Camphouse.
Yeah, she was great. She made a TikTok review of it, which I like to see more of too.
Yeah.
His name was Milt. Yeah, right there. Right there.
This guy right here.
Uh-huh.
All righty. Whoa, shit. Okay, maybe I won't read the whole thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, well, shout out to Milt. Just don't punch anybody in the face.
Yeah, Christmas Day he posted that. And, I'm always grateful for the ARC readers, and I like to hear people's honest reactions and opinions. So that's better to me than someone just saying, amazing. And it's like, okay, I mean, that's great too. Don't get me wrong. But to hear people's thoughts really helps you grow as a writer, because otherwise it's kind of an echo chamber of positivity, which I'd rather have some people be very straight with me and tell me what I did wrong or what they think I did wrong.
Mm-hmm. So this, I think I may have subconsciously put this together in my head because I thought it would be a cool idea. I cannot remember. Were you at one time talking about collaborating with Mason Marks?
Yes. Yeah, we were. We were in talks about that. Yeah. So
wait, what's going on?
Yeah. Everything's still good. We're both done with our stories. I just got a bit of a head start because it was an idea I presented to him. And he's a buddy of mine. He's somebody that I've talked to the most out of this whole community. So we just wanted to collaborate. And I presented that idea to him when he was in the middle of his last novel, The Serpent's Call. So shout out to that. and I just had a huge head start. So he's wrapping up his story now, and then we're potentially looking into inviting a third guest author as well.
Okay. So is this going to be like I don't know what you call it, dual novella? Well, you're talking about a third person, but if there wasn't a third person, were you thinking about like a dual novella or?
We're both going to contribute a story. They will be standalone stories, but they will just kind of present each person's strengths and kind of their voice, and without any censorship or any sort of limitations on their artistic expression. So I'm a big fan of his work, and obviously him as a person, we're buddies. So it just felt like a perfect fit.
Awesome. Well, have you had any of your books optioned or anyone interested in optioning them?
Not yet. That would be the dream for me. Being, I was in film school for a short amount of time out of high school, and I ultimately got into writing by writing screenplays. So that was always my goal, and I kind of approach my novels the same way, that I view it as a film first and foremost. So yeah, that would be the dream.
Okay. Yeah, it was the script for Seven I looked up one time. And I was, I'd never really read a screenplay before. So I was like, I bet that would be kind of, I guess, boring in a sense, because I guess I'm just thinking in terms of some script. But the way it just lays out the scene and the reactions, and it's all so tight and organized, it's really an art form.
Yeah, it's difficult to do, but it's like you said, it's very tight, and that's how I try to approach my novels, is to move them at a quick pace and to cut the filler as much as possible. That's obviously a process that will be refined over time. But, for me personally, my attention span's not the greatest. So to sit down and read 1,000-page novel is not something I'm that interested in. So
Yeah.
I try to take that in consideration with the readers as well.
Well, has your writing process changed over time?
The process, not so much as much as the ability. And, the first novel or two novels, and you have grand ideas that you don't necessarily know how to capitalize upon. Something like serial publication, that was a kind of a large scale idea and something very ambitious at that time in my writing career that I feel like I could pull off a lot better now. I'm sure a lot of writers feel that way, but
Yeah, I'm taking a look at your bibliography here. So, is this one yours?
yeah, that was my first novel.
Okay. Because I know sometimes people with the same name sometimes end up where they're not supposed to be.
Yeah, I had to do a lot of work to clear that up.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so you started with Constructing Entropy, and that's when you started with Symposium of the Reaper, which is a trilogy.
Right.
And then Serial Publication. And what is Toy Emporium?
That's it's a short novella that was in Symposium of the Reaper, but it's about novella length, so I just released it on its own.
Oh, okay.
So all the symposiums were short stories.
Got Infernal Moon, Black Widow Blues, and Son of a Serial Killer. So you're developing quite the bibliography here.
Yeah, and the way that publishing works, I wrote Son of a Serial Killer 2 years ago. So you're kind of always behind by several projects in your release schedule.
Oh.
So as of right now, I have 2 more novels written after Son of a Serial Killer. So it's just, whenever those come out, that's just kind of how the process of it works. So
you have kids, right? Or a kid?
Yeah, I have 2.
You have 2.
Yeah.
And how old are they?
11 and 8.
Okay. So it's not too rough finding time to write, is it? Or
no, my process is typically to write it at night about 10 to 12 or 1. I'm not a big sleeper, so that's kind of when I get everything done.
I am brain dead around that time. Anytime I do anything creative, like it has to be first thing in the morning, because I'm brain dead at like 7 p.m.
Yeah, I've heard people say that too, and I've always been the opposite, for better or worse. As soon as 8, 9 o'clock rolls around, my brain is just rolling.
I had Ronald Kelly on the show, and he was talking about how when he retired, he assumed, now that he didn't have to work, that he'd start writing during the morning, but not the case. His creativity comes out at night. And, he figured he'd be going to bed early, getting up early. It's the exact opposite.
Yeah.
So
I the same way. If I try to write in the morning, it's very bland. It's very forced. It doesn't feel like my voice at all when I read it back, and so I don't even try anymore. It's just nighttime. I don't even try before 9-10 at night.
Well, do you find any common underlying messages or themes throughout your work? I know you've written about serial killers, but I don't know, any sort of emotional theme or, something like that?
Yeah, in broad terms, I think just the human experience is kind of what drives me. That's what interests me, and that's what I write about. So, whether it's serial killers or, Infernal Moon was about nightmares and a lot of other trauma and stuff like that. It's about the human experience, and a huge influence for that was, or continues to be, Cormac McCarthy's work. That's my favorite author of all time. Very horrific, but also beautiful and incredibly detailed about what it means to be human. And that's obviously a very complex subject. So there's a lot of material to dig through.
Yeah. Wonder what it was like in that guy's head. I remember him, on the Oprah interview talking about the road, and he was in El Paso with his son. And I think he said he was in a hotel, and he said he just looked out the window at the skyline and just kind of had this vision of like this dystopian hellscape. Is that the one that won the
Pulitzer?
The Pulitzer, yeah.
Yeah.
God, amazing.
He's just one of those authors. There's not a ton of them that, when you read, I'm just kind of left in awe. Like, okay, how'd you do that? Malfi's another one. When you read and you're kind of just like, I got a lot of work to do. Yeah, I just finished up Senseless a few weeks back, and he's just really good. I don't know.
Yeah. When I had him on a few shows ago, that was the book, man.
It's actually set in my hometown, so that's why I was drawn to it.
Oh, okay.
Palmdale, Lancaster we're about 70 miles north of LA. It's in the desert, so I got a chance to talk to him about that at StokerCon last year when I met him, and just a cool moment that he was talking about this book, and he's saying it's set out in the desert outside of LA, and I went, wait a minute. So
he said he did a lot of research because he wasn't familiar with that area, I guess. Got a lot of intel, for lack of a better word, from Philip Fracassi.
Yeah. We were the three of us went out for a couple rounds of drinks at StokerCon last year, and we were talking about it quite a bit.
Nice.
So,
well, speaking of other authors, have there been any new authors that you've been impressed with that you'd like to give a plug?
Yeah, I don't know how new she is in particular, but she's a little still lesser known for her writing ability, and that would be Emma E. Murray, who wrote Crushing Snails.
Okay.
She has a new novel coming out in August through Apocalypse Party called Shoot Me in the Face on a Beautiful Day. I hope I didn't butcher that, but
that it may not be accurate.
Yeah, I hope I got the title right, because it's a long title. But I was able to read the book early, and yeah, there she is right there. Crushing Snails, that came out about a year ago, and then the new one coming out was a really good read about domestic violence was kind of at the core of it. But
so how would you describe, I see Winnie Campbell is 16 and a burgeoning serial killer. Is it like pretty extreme or art house
It's extreme. It doesn't cross that territory. I wouldn't call it extreme horror, but there are some scenes. The opening scene in Crushing Snails is kind of a gut wrencher there, but she just has a really good use of language, which is something that I pay attention to quite a bit. Just how people put things together and the craft. Yeah, that's the new one right there.
Oh,
Yeah, beautiful cover.
Shoot me in the face on a beautiful day.
Yeah,
Hell yeah.
it's a mouthful.
Now I'm trying to assist, evade abusive partner, rust his rage. Also worrying about a home invading serial killer. She's a fan of serial killers, I'm assuming.
Yeah, maybe that's why I'm drawn to her work.
Yes, indeed.
But she's somebody that I've only recently been in contact with. I've been aware of her name just in, author circles and writing circles and whatnot. But I want to say that she's only been releasing books for a couple years, which still, that's pretty new.
Oh, I like this. She has always been intrigued by the psyche and has an obsession with morally gray characters and disturbing stories.
Yeah, right up my alley.
Love the morally gray. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so her work is really good. I've only read those two so far, Crushing Snails and Shoot Me in the Face. But I'm really looking forward to that one coming out and having people get to read it.
Well, have you discovered and or employed any new marketing techniques?
I'm really bad at it. I'm really bad at marketing. Yeah, it's, I don't know. I have like a mental block about it. It's social media in general it's not my forte necessarily. So I'm trying all the time. I'm trying new things and whatnot, but I'm really interested in writing and not much else. So
if you do a TikTok dance, I'll do a TikTok dance.
We can collaborate on one. We can collaborate. Yeah, it's just the trends of it and all that. I just don't understand it. And I don't know if it's an age thing at this point or what, but generational thing or...
it's probably 40% age and 60% disposition.
Probably. Probably. I don't know. I just...
For me, at least.
Yeah, no, it's the same way. It's something that I've tried to do and expand upon, but yeah, I need to work on that. So this book, Son of a Serial Killer, was the first time I've worked with a publisher. And that was one of my main interests, was kind of expanding my reader base and just having them employ different techniques on my behalf. The owner of the company knows my feelings toward marketing, and I know it's a part of the business, but it's not my strength.
Yeah. Well, are you a member of the Books of Horror Facebook group?
Yes, I am. I have been for about a year or so, and that's actually where I met Emma or talked to her online.
Awesome.
So, yeah, it's a great group. So there's a lot of people on there that are very supportive, and if you're an author, you kind of have to be. I think nowadays you have to be part of that group if you're an indie author, especially.
Yeah, I got kind of connected with Tiffany Coplin.
Yeah.
And had her on the show. So she will be on this Tuesday.
Oh, great.
And,
I'll have to listen.
Yeah, everything she was talking about, I was like, man, sounds like a pretty hotbed of indie horror activity.
Yeah. So. She's incredibly supportive. The work that she does for all of us, it's tireless work on her part. So it's incredibly appreciated. And the people that I've been able to meet and talk to in that group, another one is Duncan Ralston. I don't know if you've had him on.
Mm-mm.
Author of Womb and many others, but that's his most famous one.
Yeah, I know who he is.
So I was able to provide edits for his latest book, Halloween, just by meeting him through that group. So it's just a really great place to meet readers and authors alike.
Okay. Well, you mentioned StokerCon, which I'm going to make it one of these years.
Yeah.
It's just so far away, so much money.
Yeah.
Have you been going to any other cons, like on a regular basis? And if so, how have the experience has been?
There's surprisingly very few out my way for some reason. You'd think being in Southern California, there would be quite a bit, but most of the events I do are like local places, pop-up events. There's a local brewery I like to go to and they host me and I do pretty well there. But as far as big events, I haven't been to anything since StokerCon, which was a year ago today. Now that I look at the date. So, but it was a great experience. That's actually where I got to meet Rebecca Rowland in person for the first time. So I got to meet her. I got to meet Malfi and Fracassi and Clay McLeod Chaplin was there, or Chapman, sorry. And there were so many people. I'm having a hard time. Stephen Graham Jones was there. CJ Lead. So it was a really good experience, but we don't have a ton of them out this way. And just to try to travel across country for work is difficult, or with work.
Yeah. Yeah. We're going to go to the Texas author. We went last year and we're going to go this year. That's a really nice con that's only like 3.5 hours from me. I met Rebecca and Malfi at that one. Philip Fracassi wasn't at that one. But yeah, it's actually, I think this will be its 4th year and it keeps expanding. And it finally got to the point where the guy that puts it together, Merrill David, I'm sure you've probably read his stuff. Shout out to Merrill. It's going to be in a convention center now, I think, because it got too big for the hotel. So, yeah.
Yeah, he invited me last year. I just wasn't able to make it. Just work commitments and kids, and it's a lot at this point. But I'd love to make it out there soon. That's not too far from me.
Yeah.
So,
well, your books are available on godless.com. And I know it exists, and it's always out of sight, out of mind. I know it's a place where I could just stumble onto some gold, and I always forget about it. But so I wanted to bring it up because I know you have some stuff on it. For those that aren't familiar, can you tell us a little bit about godless.com and the benefits from hosting your work there? And I'm going to just bring it up real quick.
Yeah, it's for indies. I mean, it's a fantastic opportunity to get your work read and out there, and they're very supportive. Drew, who runs it, he only takes 10% of the royalties for hosting on their website. I mean, that's an absurd split that you get 90% as the author. So it's uncensored, unfiltered. He doesn't discriminate against who's going on there. And it's just been another avenue for me to expand the readership, which, as we talked about before, is not my strong suit. So,
okay. What is it? He's got live horror TV, Screambox.
Yeah, they've expanded quite a bit since I've been on there. I think some of my first releases were on there, and it's all indie stuff, so it's a great opportunity.
Okay.
Cannibal Sluts 4. That's
I just saw that. I'm looking at this drop down menu and I was like, Cannibal Sluts 4. Holy shit.
I wonder if there's a 1 through 3 or if he just started on 4.
Well, yeah, you start with 4. Push. Oh my God. Childbirth horror. Holy shit. Yeah. See, this is such an awesome website. And it's always out of sight, out of mind. And I know, it's a gold mine to find some new authors. I just noticed this search. I don't know if you can see it. This search engine right here says, "What the fuck are you looking for?" Oh, that's classic.
Yeah, very on brand.
Yeah. All right. Well, I was taking a look at your Substack. I think I may have asked you about this the last time you were on. Substack seems like a pretty solid platform. Like, I don't know if it would be a Patreon alternative or kind of if they have different strengths, but what is your advice to other authors as far as utilizing Substack?
It's a very easy way to basically put a newsletter together. Especially, you can just post whenever you want, and it sends emails directly to your subscribers and readers, so you can announce new releases and things like that. Admittedly, I haven't kept up on it as much as I should. Sometimes there's not a ton to report. It's like, what did you do the last week? Oh, I was writing every single day. It's not that exciting to report. I should probably find a way to utilize that more because it does get emailed directly to the subscribers, which is great. You're speaking directly to them. And, with social media, a lot of your posts get lost in the algorithm and things like that. So it's a really good tool.
So when you say newsletter, you can utilize it like, I don't know, an example would be like MailChimp, something like that, or is it not quite that functional?
I mean, I don't know. I've dived into all the features yet, but it's something that allows you to speak directly to your readership, and it's basically a blog. You have a blog of what's going on, and then that gets sent directly to the readers. So it's I haven't gotten into the newsletters yet. and I definitely should at some point. But the Substack's nice because you can just go on there and say, hey, here's what's going on. I've kind of been working on a lot of projects for a while, and I think my last post was just kind of explaining my absence because I was quiet online for maybe 6 months or so, just working on a novel that is coming out in February. So
Right.
it's, sometimes it's hard to balance both. You want to kind of disappear into the writer cave and then not be online. I mean, that's,
Yeah. Well, I probably should have asked you this beforehand. I thought I had it marked down to do so, but I didn't. Would you like to read a passage from the book?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I think the chapter where Glenn has his sort of meltdown in the office room might be a good one.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that was one of the earliest scenes that I wrote, and I just kind of set it aside until it fit in the story.
Interesting.
Okay, so Glenn falls asleep in the meeting while they're talking about corporate sort of stuff, and we'll pick up right from a girl sitting next to him speaks to him, and she says, "Psst, don't fall asleep or you might never wake again, like me." Glenn straightens up in a jolt and looks to his right to see a young woman with poofy permed hair mostly contained beneath a headband and wearing a neon crop top. Her face is heavily bruised and bloodied with both eyes blackened. "Excuse me, but what did you say?" "I said, you don't want to fall asleep." The woman chokes on her tongue as it flops out through a massive slit in her throat, and she tries frantically to push it back inside. Glenn leaps up and knocks his chair over as he releases a shriek. The meeting comes to a screeching halt while Monica glares at him, mortified. His co-workers turn quickly in their chairs to stare and sneer in varying degrees of disgust. "Sorry, I'm really sorry, Glenn begins to hyperventilate as his eyes dart around in circles, eventually landing on Dana beside him, who silently pleads for him to sit down. Small patches of muttering pick up from around the room as their eyes burn holes in his body. Dana finally tugs on the side of his pants to force him back into his seat. Another awkward moment of silence follows before the meeting continues. "You know, I always liked you. I knew you were stalking me for a reason," the woman continues from Glenn's right, licking her lips and teeth with a bloody tongue to leave red streaks behind as she grins. "What the hell are you talking about? I've never even met you," he whispers in a panic from the corner of his mouth. "Don't try to deny it, Brock. You picked me for a reason. You wanted me to be your special girl." The young woman's eyes descend into their sockets, as if unseen hands dig their thumbs into them, leaving empty, sunken pockets in their place while thick, black blood begins to pour down her cheeks. She removes the hand holding her skin together and extends the thumb sharply, running it along the incision in her throat as the slit reopens beneath. "Blackwood's only son must pay forevermore," they chant again. So that's one of my favorite chapters in the book, and one that I wrote early on and really wanted to build upon, kind of the Glenn against the world sort of narrative. So, spoiler alert, he starts seeing dead people and the victims of his father come back to haunt him. So, kind of the sins of the father trope.
Very nice.
Thank you.
Simmer down, people. All right. I don't know who these people are. They just walked in, sat down.
Appreciate the audience.
Didn't pay for tickets or anything. Well, last question, sir. Have there been any life-changing events since we last spoke?
Nothing major, just a lot of work. I've been working far too much this year in particular, the last 6 months or so. I've been doing about 70, 80-hour weeks, and then...
Jesus!
Yeah, I'm ready for it to be done here. It's a short term.
Are you still welding?
Yeah, so I teach welding during the day. That's my day job. And then at night, I've been actually welding. I picked up a contract that I promised myself I wasn't going to do when I took this
government
job. Yes.
Is it government?
It is.
Defense contractor?
Yeah.
Do you have to kill me now?
No, not from just that. So
okay. Don't tell me anymore.
Yeah, it's a defense contract that that was my previous life, and it kind of reminds me of, if you've ever seen The Hurt Locker, the movie. He's a EOD bomb diffuser specialist for the Army, and he just can't help himself but keep going back to it was in Iraq at the time, 2004. He just keeps going back. He gets home and then he finds himself bored and he goes back because that's what he loves. And that's kind of how I find myself with these welding contracts. And it's kind of miss the adrenaline when you're sitting in a classroom for a long term. So that's been the biggest change. I love it and I'm appreciative of it, and I should be done here in about a month or so.
Okay. Well, don't burn yourself out. We need more work, like artistic work from you. We don't need 70, 80-hour work weeks. That's all work, no play makes Andrew a dull boy.
Yeah, it does.
We don't need you going nuts killing people.
So far, so good.
Well, Andrew, as always, it has been a pleasure talking with you.
Absolutely. Thank you. Appreciate you having me back on. It's one of my favorite podcasts to do for sure.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Well, as we bring the show to a close, is there anything you'd like to plug, let your readers know about, or reiterate?
Yes. The novel that I mentioned a few minutes ago, Middle Finger, Rigor Mortis, that's coming out through Mad Axe Media, who published Son of a Serial Killer, and that'll be out in February 2026. So we're in the editing stages right now. Super excited for that one. That's possibly my favorite work that I've written so far. Maybe recency bias, but so yeah, Middle Finger, Rigor Mortis, that's coming out February.
Sounds good. We will await with bated breath.
Me too.
All right. Well, listeners at home, all links are in the description. And Andrew, thank you again for joining me.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
And thank you to everyone who tuned in. If you enjoyed today's episode, please be sure to like, share, and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Be sure to tune in next Tuesday for a new episode featuring the best and brightest authors and filmmakers of dark literature and film. So until then, stay healthy, stay sane, and as always, thank you for listening. See you next time.